Welcome back to Modular Nerds. I am Mimir,
And I'm Lennex.
and today we're going to be talking about two different topics. We're going to go ahead and split it up. I'm going to probably try and take the first hour, see how that goes. Hopefully it doesn't go too far over the hour, but we'll see. We'll see how this goes. Remember to check us out on YouTube, check out the merch shop. A lot of cool stuff. A couple people have already bought some things other than just us. So yeah, that's pretty cool. Anything? Oh, actually, before I pass it off, thank you for all the support on the past videos that we've had. Our zombies video went up and got like a pretty good amount of traction within the first like couple days. Look out for the second part. Probably going to be happening within the next few weeks here. We're going to try and separate out the videos, so it's not one topic and then part two of that same topic the next week. So yeah, keep a lookout for that. Is there anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, except for buy more of our stuff. Yeah, it's going to be interact with our videos, guys. Comment, put your opinions out there. We want to interact with the audience. A lot of you are quiet, reserved. Be more outgoing. Be more adventurous. Tell me you think I'm an idiot. I'd love to respond to you. No, really, I'd love to respond to you.
Yeah. So I guess with that, we will jump right into it.
Let's go.
So, my topic is Kingdom Hearts. Not sure if you know a whole lot about Kingdom Hearts.
I know a little bit about Kingdom Hearts that I've assimilated through pop culture. I don't know a ton about it. I know about like the Disney characters, a little bit of meme culture. Donald never heals anyone in the game, apparently. I get some basic premises that I cover, but I got no idea how the games fit together or what the overall story is.
Okay. Well, I guess just to kind of start it all off, I just want to let everybody know I'm going to be sticking with the basics of Kingdom Hearts 1. I want to keep it pretty simple. I want to make sure that others can kind of get that experience if they want to. I don't want to do too many spoilers for it. But I have some pretty deep topic like for the intro of the game. Once it kind of gets to a certain point, I'm just gonna kind of leave it at that and see how you guys like that. If you want, I can go into more detail. I can do the entire Kingdom Hearts storyline if you guys want, because let me tell you, it's crazy. The whole story is it's pretty confusing, especially if you're just kind of jumping headfirst into it, and not really understanding like which games come before which ones, because they don't go in order. Some of them come in between other games. But like I said, we're just gonna stick with the basics of Kingdom Hearts 1. It's a mix between Final Fantasy and Disney. So you have quite a few like Final Fantasy characters kind of thrown throughout the game, and
Okay.
the main basics of the game is you're going around to all of these like different worlds that are all Disney themed. Like you visit, let's see, some of the first few ones. Like you go to Alice in Wonderland's world, so the whole
Okay.
world is kind of themed around Alice in Wonderland and everything.
That's cool.
Yeah, so that's like once you start getting into the gameplay of it and everything, that's basically most of the gameplay. You're performing certain types of missions, and I don't want to spoil too much stuff with that. But once you start getting into the story, you have to start visiting all these other Disney worlds, and there's a ton of them. And throughout all the different games, like there's a ton of different Disney worlds, so it's a pretty expansive universe.
Okay.
It's your classic story of light versus darkness. So it's definitely one of those kind of like pulling at your heartstrings at times games, and because they're kind of older, like the first Kingdom Hearts was released in 2002, so it's a little bit corny. Like some of the aspects of the game and everything, like um, you know, the whole trope of like friendship will, defeat you type of thing. Like it's
Oh,
that type
okay.
of like funny corniness and everything too.
Like
But some of it actually is like heartwarming.
those things we laugh at for how cheesy they are now, but back in 2002, people were like, "Oh, this is so deep."
Well, I don't even know if it was considered deep then, but as more of a kid, I definitely was like, yeah, friendship is awesome, But
And
that's because
in,
I
two,
was a kid.
in 2002, I was probably still young enough to believe, yeah, friendship will win the day all on its own.
Yeah. So it's one of those types of games, or at least that's one of those series. Some of the games actually get kind of dark, and some of the like uh, story aspects can get pretty dark. Um, so it's not just for kids. Don't think it's you running around playing this nice, soft, heartwarming game that is all mushy. Like some of it's like pretty serious stuff along with it.
Oh, I believe you. One of the things that I argue with people regularly is telling them it's like just because cartoons a lot of them are directed at children doesn't mean that it's not like a medium that you can communicate like complicated concepts and really deep meaningful characters and ideas and stuff like that. And the same applies to video games. Like just because it seems like it might be meant for kids doesn't mean that there's not another layer there.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those games that even if you're 30 or 40 years old, like you're still gonna enjoy it. I still enjoy it. Like just looking back at some of the videos, and actually I planned on replaying the games as well. Like I'm gonna have to look into doing all that soon too. Um, but there's a lot of story events that actually take place before Kingdom Hearts 1. Um, so I won't go into all of that unless people want me to actually do the story. If they want me to do the story, I can go through and I can do the games, one by one, and do it in the timeline, because Kingdom Hearts kind of starts like third in the timeline, but the two stuff before that, there's quite a bit of story back there. Um, so again, let me know if that's something you guys want. Um, but for this, we'll keep it simple and clean, and that's a little joke for Kingdom Hearts fans. There's a song that's called "Simple and Clean." Um,
Okay.
so our story starts on an island called Destiny Island. You meet your first few characters. Sora, he's the main character that you play in the game. He's got like spiky brown hair, really big shoes, kind of like that Mickey Mouse look. The big shoes and kind of like slightly larger hands and everything. They look very cartoony. Um, and during the edit and everything for this for YouTube, I might actually start throwing up images. I'm getting better with the editing, so we'll see how that works. Um, if so, then you'll be seeing on YouTube some things like that, like little edits of the characters and things. Um, he's very anime like, and he's kind of lazy and like a bit of a goof. That's kind of the vibe that he gives off. And I think at the beginning of this game, he's like 13 or 14 years old. So he's a pretty young character, like early teens. And then you have Riku. Riku is Sora's best friend. Grew up with him there on the island and everything. Um, he's I think like a year older than Sora. So he's kind of like the big brother. He's got like the white kind of shoulder length, spiked downward type of hair. Very anime. His
I was gonna say this sounds so anime right now.
Yeah, he's got like the slightly bigger feet too, like the slightly bigger shoes, but not as big as Sora's. Sora's definitely got feet that are very similar to Mickey Mouse, and that kind of plays in the whole like Disney aspect of the game. Riku is a little bit more kind of stylized in the Final Fantasy aspect. Not as much, but you can definitely see there's like a contrast between the two characters. And he's more serious. He gives off like a more mature vibe. And he really wants to leave the island and go see like other worlds. And we'll get into that kind of a little bit as to why. But then you have your third character, which is Kairi. Kairi was Sora and Riku's like best friend. It was also Sora's kind of crush. She showed up on the island pretty young, and they kind of really hit it off like as best friends and everything. And it's definitely one of those like you grew up with this chick and you really like her, and you guys are best friends and you spend all the time together. So he's got this huge crush on her.
This is so anime right now.
Yeah, she's kind of got like that reddish brown hair, like a burgundy or hazelnut style, and it's like short, like kind of anime like too. Also got like the medium shoes, and yes, I'm bringing up their shoes a lot because it makes sense when you actually like kind of look at the characters and kind of see how the game design is. Less so of story development type stuff. It's just mostly game design. And I really like the designs of these characters. She's more like caring and fun-loving and kind and pure. She's got that like, innocence vibe to her. There's other characters that are on this island too, which these other three are all Final Fantasy characters. You have Titus, Waka, and Selphie. They look a little different, and their ages aren't exact, but they're all from Final Fantasy. Some are from the same one, but yeah.
I was gonna say, like, I'm not a huge Final Fantasy guy either, but some of those names are sounding familiar now.
Yeah, and I don't know a whole lot about Final Fantasy. It's just definitely one of those things that I know for a lot of people is the same with Kingdom Hearts, where it's like, how do you jump in and figure out what's going on, So
right.
We'll start with the opening of the game, because this was kind of just explaining who your characters are right here at the beginning. So you got a little bit of backstory when I mention their names. You kind of get a picture of them in your head while I'm kind of going through this. So at the very start of the game, you have a voiceover of Sora asking, what's real? Is this a dream? And then he kind of wakes up standing on a beach after kind of like falling through the water with that voiceover going. So he stands up on the beach, and the whole intro is a music video. And I love it so much. It looks so good.
It's the anime opening with the OST.
Oh yeah, like this is like 100% like an anime intro. Because as I'm going through this, you're gonna be like, "Holy shit, that's anime as fuck." So he wakes up standing on a beach, and he has like this dream that he sees Riku standing out in the water, and he kind of sees him and he waves, and he goes to like run out after him. And the wave starts to kind of like pull up and like grow behind him, and Riku turns and kind of holds his hand out, almost like welcoming Sora to follow him. So Sora runs after Riku, and then the wave crashes and hits him and throws him back into the water. And then we see Riku kind of like underwater, like the water seems deeper than it should be. And he's holding his hand out still towards Sora. Sora's trying to swim towards him, and he begins to start getting pulled back, like towards the beach and everything. He ends up rising to the surface and stands up, and so like the water now seems a lot more shallow because he's standing in it, where he was just tumbling around in the water. So he rises to the surface, and he sees Kyrie standing on the beach, calling to him, kind of like, shouting and waving. So Sora runs to Kyrie, where they kind of laugh for a second, and then Kyrie stops and looks up towards the sky behind Sora. Sora turns around and sees himself falling from the sky, with like a bunch of falling stars, like kind of in the background and everything. Um, the scene switches to like Sora's like up close face and everything, and it's him falling, but then it kind of switches again to where it's where he was just standing on the beach is now where he's falling from, and Kyrie's like next to him, and she's like, rising up because he's falling, but it looks like she's standing on nothing, and now all of a sudden he's like falling through the sky as if he was the one that he just seen falling through the sky.
Okay.
Yeah. So he ends up falling into the water and sinks to the bottom. And when he lands and kind of like stands there for a second, like a bunch of birds form from the ground and start flying away. And it reveals like this stained glass platform that he's standing on of Snow White and like, the dwarves and everything. So it brings Disney into it. So he's just kind of like standing there, and it's like this weird dreamy state, and the whole time like this kick-ass song is playing.
Okay.
It's the song Simple and Clean. It's again very anime the way all this goes, and then the song kind of like fades as he's landing there on the ground. So that's immediately what you're like hit with when the game starts.
Okay.
And then we get like some text going across the screen, kind of like subtitles or whatever. No voiceover or anything. As if somebody's like talking to Sora, because he's kind of like looking around and everything, like as if he's hearing whoever's saying this. But again, there's no voiceover; it's just text on the screen. There's some cryptic messages, along with like telling you like the basic controls and everything. I'm not gonna tell you what these cryptic messages say, mostly
Okay,
because
I thought you were about to tell me you weren't going to tell me what the controls were, and I was like, well, that's
no,
probably for the best right now.
no, yeah. So in this part, you decide like on a path. You pick between a few items to decide like the bonuses that you get for the game. I think it's been a long time since I knew exactly what the real aspect of the game was, if it gave you like certain bonuses for which item you picked, or if it was just kind of like it skewed your stats a little bit or whatever. I don't remember. But it's like a attack, defense, and magic. You pick between like a sword, a shield, and a wand or whatever.
Character build, gotcha.
Yeah. And then you have to give up one of those powers. So you continue the tutorial with like the cryptic messages coming up on the screen. And you end up meeting your first enemy, the Heartless. So the main enemy of the game, they're called the Heartless, and I'll go more into those guys later, like who the Heartless are and kind of like the differences between some of it.
Okay.
These ones that you fight, they're called Shadows. They're your basic average Heartless. They're these little black shadow things with like they look like they have these weird antennae. They almost look like ants, I guess you could say, like four or I guess two-legged ants with hands, And then
Okay, I'm guessing they're like the trash mob because they're like the tutorial monsters.
yeah, they're your basic bitch monsters. They got
Gotcha.
the glowing yellow eyes and everything. So they're these weird little like wispy looking guys.
Okay.
And then let's see, where did I leave off? Oh, they come in all different forms and everything. Like the Heartless, they take on different shapes and they have different types. And like I said, I'll go more into that in a little bit here. So you end up continuing on like fighting through some of the creatures and progressing the tutorial. And that's when you end up meeting those 3 Final Fantasy kids, where they actually ask you some questions about yourself, like, who you are and everything, what your like worst fears are, or things like that, like little like psychology type questions, um, and that just kind of like helps form your character a little bit too, I guess. I don't know 100% if that has some real effect or if it's just kind of a little bit more flavor. Like I said, it's been a long time since I've kind of dealt with that, so I don't remember.
Okay.
So once you kind of get through that part, you end up back at like the stained glass discs with the princesses on each one of them. So every time you like complete a disc and move on to the next area, it's a new princess on the disc. And they're all like different colors and everything. Like Snow White's yellow, and I think Sleeping Beauty's pink or whatever. Like so they're all different colors. Looks very pretty. The whole the whole game, the whole aspect of this. It's basically like these giant pillars in like a nothingness with these really nice stained glass on top. So it looks pretty cool.
Oh, okay.
So you end up actually fighting a giant Heartless at this point that kind of like grows out of your shadow, and it's called the Dark Side. He looks like this massive shadow that's like really ripped, and in the center of his chest is like this hole where there's like a heart shape. So that's like indicating that like his chest is empty. He has no heart. He is a heartless. And more cryptic messages are popping up on the screen about opening the door as Sora starts sinking like into the darkness as he's like fighting and everything. And he ends up like Sora ends up waking back up on the beach, like as if everything he just went through was all just a big dream. And Kyrie's kind of like making fun of him for being lazy and like trying to wake him up. And Sora's all confused about his dream. He doesn't get what it meant or what happened. He's kind of like was any of that real? Like holy cow type of thing.
Did I just go through a whole tutorial and nothing happened?
Yeah. So they start kind of talking a little bit. And we learn that Kyrie has no memory of like her hometown or where she came from or anything before the island. All she remembers is being little and being on the island. But Sora and Riku remember that she wasn't there like always. Like she came there, but she doesn't remember anything that happened before that. So that's when Riku comes along and he mentions that they need to work on the raft. That they want to use to go see like other worlds. They were told that they can sail out and go find these other worlds, and maybe they can find Kyrie's home. So Riku's talking about how he wants to find why are they on this island. What else is out there. They're kind of like sitting having like a little heart to heart on this little tree. And then they start making their way back towards like their home or whatever. And Riku tosses Sora a Paupu fruit. It looks like this little like star. It's like very puffy looking. And he explains that two people sharing one means their destinies become intertwined and they remain a part of each other's lives no matter what. And he kind of hints at Sora wants to share that with Kyrie. So he's like, he tells him, "You wanted one, didn't you?" And he's like, "Why don't you test it, see if it works?" And Sora's like, "What? What do you mean? What are you talking about?" And Riku just kind of like laughs at him, it being like that big brother where it's like, "Okay, come on, I know you have a crush on her, like, go on." It's a very like cute little interaction with them. So Sora, I think, ends up like tossing the fruit like off the bridge or whatever, out of I don't know, maybe embarrassment or whatever, or maybe he didn't believe that it was true or whatever. And then they just go running after Kyrie, as like the sun is setting. So that's kind of the intro for your your main hero and his friends who are close to him. It then jumps to this large castle. It shows like this huge castle, looks very Disney. And then we see Donald Duck walking through the hallway, and he's in like these wizard robes slash outfit. He's got this big wizard hat and everything, and he's kind of, like, I don't know, singing to himself as he's going down the hallway, or kind of like, humming type of thing, kind of like do 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 type of whatever.
Yeah, inconspicuous whistling.
Yeah, so he's but Donald Duck voice.
Okay, kazooing. Okay.
Yeah, so so he's heading down the hall towards like this big throne room. He gets to the throne, and he's like, good morning, Your Majesty. And he looks and he sees that the throne is empty, and out from behind the throne is Pluto the dog, holding a letter in his mouth that has the Mickey Mouse logo on it. So Donald reads the letter and he freaks out. He just starts fucking going nuts. And then it cuts to Donald running into like this big garden, just kind of, doing his like scream and everything, like the wah, and just running through. And it shows Goofy sleeping on the grass in like this knight's armor. So Donald comes running up and he's like yelling at Goofy to wake up and everything. And he's like, there's a problem and nobody can know about it. And Goofy's like, not even the queen? And he's like, no. And he's like, not even Daisy? And he's like, nope, not her either. And then he kind of like looks past Donald and he's like, good morning, ladies. And then Donald's like, and he turns around and Minnie and Daisy are standing there and they heard like everything.
Got him.
Yeah, so, and then it cuts back to the island.
Oh my god.
Oh yeah, there's a lot to this. So it cuts back to the island, and it shows like this little cave scene. Sora's looking at some drawings on the wall, and it looks like they were like carved in with like a stone. You know how like when you scratch stone or whatever, and it has like that white like chalkiness to it or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it looks like that. So like they kind of like scratched it into the stone with another rock. It's drawings of Sora and Kairi like standing next, or like facing each other. It has like a flashback of when young Sora and young Kairi were drawing these, and then kind of like jumps back again to the present, showing Sora drawing himself, giving Kairi the Paopu fruit. He's like handing it to her and everything. So it's like, oh, that's cute. He didn't give it to her for real, but like maybe he's building up the courage by like drawing this out or whatever, or maybe this is just him symbolizing that, he wants to or whatever.
Okay.
And then he kind of stops and he hears a noise like behind him, and kind of like shouts out like, who's there? And you see like off in the corner there's this like brown hooded figure kind of standing in the corner, and in like a deep voice he says, let's see, I know I wrote it down in here because I wanted to get it right.
I was gonna say, knowing that it's Disney, just figure in brown robes, that could be one of a dozen characters I can think of.
He says he's there to see the door to this world, that this world has been connected, tied to the darkness, soon to be completely eclipsed. And Sora's like, kind of like, what? And he's trying to see the guy and like, trying to figure out what the hell he's talking about. And he tells Sora, you do not yet know what lies beyond this door. And he tells him, there's so much to learn, and that Sora understands so little. He continues on saying that going out to see what's out there is a meaningless effort, that those who know nothing can understand nothing. And then it kind of like fades out, like the figure kind of disappears and that part fades out.
Okay.
And then you continue playing on and everything, like collecting stuff for the raft and all that, like just skipping through like the actual like little gameplay stuff for the tutorial, like doing little missions on the island. You end up like finishing the raft, and then you see Sora and Kairi sitting on the dock talking about how Riku's changed. And then Kairi tells Sora they should just take the raft and go, just the two of them. And Sora's like thrown off. He's like, "What? What do you mean?" And then she kind of laughs it off and says she's just kidding. Sora's like, "Well, what's gotten into you? You know, she's the one who's changed." And she's like, "Maybe," in like a sad tone. And then she explains how she was scared at first, but now she's ready because no matter where she goes or what she sees, she can always come back here. And
girls are such mysterious creatures, especially anime ones.
So she asks Sora to never change and says that she can't wait to set sail. Like they're supposed to be setting sail tomorrow in the morning. It's like sunset and everything. She's so excited for it. And then the game cuts back to the castle.
Oh my god, okay.
So it then shows the letter that Donald Duck was reading. And I'm going to tell you right now, it's kind of a little bit of a long letter. I mean, it's not terribly long, but I'm going to try and speed through it a little bit. So,
okay.
The letter says, "Donald, sorry to rush off without saying goodbye, but there's big trouble brewing. Not sure why, but the stars have been blinking out one by one. And that means disaster can't be far behind. I hate to leave you all, but I've got to go check in on it. Let's see. There's someone with a key, the key to our survival. So I need you and Goofy to find him and stick with him. Got it? We need that key or we're doomed. So go to Traverse Town and find Leon. He'll point you in the right direction. P.S. Would you apologize to Minnie for me? Thanks, pal." And then sign with a little like Mickey head.
Yep.
So
I love the idea that Mickey Mouse's official signature is just a pair of mouse ears.
Yup. I mean, it's the universal symbol for Mickey Mouse.
It's like that thing on like the profiles like on social media where it's like all these descriptor words. You go to Mickey Mouse's and it's just like, you know who I am.
Yeah. So then, like, it basically gives the idea that now the ladies have like read the letter or Donald told them like what it said or whatever. So Queen Minnie sends Donald and Goofy on their way and sends Jiminy Cricket along with them to chronicle their journey, their travels.
What a cast.
Yeah, so he's supposed to be kind of like your note taker. So like throughout the game and everything, whenever you like encounter something new where it has to like explain it, it's basically like Jiminy Cricket's writing it down. So it kind of reads off as if it was like Jiminy Cricket's personal journal or like a chronicle of like your guys' journey. So when you meet a new enemy and it's like describing the enemy, it's kind of written out like Jiminy wrote it.
Okay.
So I thought that was pretty cool, you know, like instead of just, you know, being like, oh, this is this type of enemy and it does this. It's more of like, oh, we encountered this guy and he was like this or whatever, and it kind of feels more personal instead of just, you know, like printed out. So as they're kind of like walking down the staircase and everything, Jiminy and Donald and Goofy, Jiminy talks about how his worlds disappeared and everyone was scattered and he barely made it out and he made it there to the castle. And Goofy explains that they can't tell anybody that they're from other worlds, or where they're from or anything, because they have to protect the world border, not the new world border. Sorry, they have to protect the world border. And Donald,
the new world order. Oh God, Goofy, no.
And then Donald's like, "You mean order?" And that's kind of a joke because, again, without trying to spoil too much, like the worlds are there's borders between the worlds, which is why they can't like tell people that they're from another world, because they're supposed to be locked and sealed. Like people aren't supposed to be able to like go to different worlds. That's kind of what the guy was talking about before with the door like being shut, and this world is connected and everything, so you don't know what lies beyond this door and all that. Like, so there is supposed to be a border around like these worlds. So that joke's a little important, and it kind of flies over most people's heads because it just sounds like a typo or like a misspeak.
Okay.
Um,
So it's like it's one of those jokes you pick up on your second or third playthrough or revisiting the game 5 years later, not something you typically pick up the first time through.
yeah, and that's why I said like I don't want to go too much into it because I don't want to spoil things, but I want to point out that it is important to understand because it kind of makes more sense knowing that with what the guy said at the door with Sora. It kind of connects the two a little bit.
I gotcha, and it's good to know that there's that type of humor in there too, because Disney is oddly good with those kinds of jokes. That like the family-oriented ones, not just the ones directed at kids. So it's nice to know that that's included in this game.
Yeah. So I don't have too much left to go through. At least what I have written here. I know I'm going to kind of expand on some of it, and not just go straight note by note on this. But so in the rest of the game, like I said, I don't want to go through too much because I want people to play it. I really do. This game was an amazing game when I was growing up, and it was definitely one of those things where I sat down and I played for hours and hours, and sometimes I'd get stuck on fights, sometimes I didn't know exactly what to do. I mean, I was younger, but the game itself was just so much fun that even revisiting some of the old areas and everything, like, it was worth it. In the storyline itself, like I said in the beginning, there were some like real heart-touching moments. So,
Okay.
I really urge people to at least look up more on this game, or ask for me to go through the entire storyline. Because I will. I will fill this notebook with everything. Plus, this book that I just recently bought like has the entire like storyline up to it until 3, I think. So I really would only have to get notes on 3, and then I could go over the rest of the story. But again, let's go back to the Heartless. Let's talk a little bit more about the Heartless.
Okay.
So there's 2 kinds of Heartless. You have the pure or pure blood Heartless. They're natural Heartless. They were born when people's hearts are consumed by darkness. So somebody is so evil or something terrible happens with them and their heart is consumed by darkness, and they turn into, or at least the heart turns into a Heartless. And I guess too I should probably mention that there's 3 parts to a person in this series. You have your heart, which is not a like physical heart. It's, kind of more of like your like essence, I guess. Like your soul, your spirit or whatever. But then you also have your soul, which is a little bit different. Your heart's kind of like your intentions, your morale, or not morale, your morals, So it's kind of, it is a very much like a physical / ethereal thing. It's weird to explain. You can actually see like the heart kind of like fade from the body and everything, but the body's still there and the person's still able to move around. They still have life to them, but their heart is gone.
Okay, it's all metaphorical and metaphysical and stuff like that.
Yeah. And normally these pure blood Heartless or pure Heartless, they're like an ink black with the yellow eyes. They can get some more colors on them as they get bigger, but not always. Like some of them will like start getting more like reds and stuff like attached to them or whatever, just to kind of like mix up the style a little bit. But generally, you'll see the ones that are like mostly like shadowy black with the yellow eyes. Those are the pure Heartless.
Okay.
They're most common in places that are like saturated with darkness. So when a world falls to darkness, that's because there's so much like evil and like malice there that like the Heartless start spawning and taking over and start like running rampant in that area. The Heartless are supposed to be locked away type of deal, but they're taking over.
Okay. It's like a plague on the Kingdom Hearts multiverse.
Yeah, and we won't even go into what exactly Kingdom Hearts itself means because, woof, oh boy. Kingdom Hearts itself is a physical slash metaphorical place. So, plus it's an idea. So yeah, it's super confusing, and we can go into it more another time. But
Okay.
when the Heartless get destroyed, they like disappear in a puff of darkness, and most of the time they have that like heart-shaped hole in them, whether it's like on their chest or in their like abdomen or whatever. Like they usually have that like hole in them that signifies that they're a purebred Heartless. Yeah, pure blood Heartless. And then you have the Emblem Heartless. The Emblem Heartless were created in a lab by adding synthesized material to pure Heartless. They're technically more powerful than pure Heartless, and I won't spoil who or how or why the Emblem Heartless were created, but basically they were created, you know, to be like better soldiers for the evil people, the big bad evil person of the whole universe, like the whole
Okay.
Kingdom Hearts universe. They're more or less controlled. Like all the Heartless are more or less controlled by their like leader, and it's usually a Disney villain. So the one of the main bad guys in the first game is Maleficent.
Of course.
Yeah, so she's kind of like the ringleader of like the group of baddies that are trying to take over.
Well, to be fair, OG Batty, she's pretty good. I
Yeah,
mean, they cast Angelina Jolie to play her in the movies that they eventually made, but you can't beat OG Maleficent.
yeah, yeah. But she's supposed to be like the quote unquote big bad until you find out later that there's a bigger bad. So yeah,
Okay.
you'll have to play to find that out. They usually take on forms based on like the Heartless take on forms based on like what Disney World you're playing in. So like the Little Mermaid, they can show up as like sharks and fish and things like that. In Aladdin, they show up, with like the typical Arabian dress, with the scimitars and everything. You have, let's see, what's one of the other ones? Well, they have like knights and stuff like that too, and some of the other ones. But so
Okay.
yeah, it just kind of basically takes on the theme of the world that you're in, so it doesn't feel like you're always fighting the same bad guys.
That's cool.
Yeah, which I really liked the design for that. It kind of it made it feel new, even though some of them are just they're basically just reskins. Like there's still the same basic types of enemies, just reskinned to look different in a different world. But
Right.
again, that makes it fun.
Yeah, and it's interesting, just like from me hearing about this, to think that it's like, okay, so the Heartless are affected by whatever world that they're in. Like there's something in the world that affects their appearance, or there's something in them that is affected by the world they're in.
Yes, and funnily enough, when you travel to certain worlds, your appearance also changes. Like when you
Oh,
go into like the Little Mermaids world, like you actually become like a merman, but you have a shark bottom instead of like a fish bottom, you know. So that's
Okay.
pretty cool.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool.
And I think Donald becomes like an octopus with like Donald Duck's like upper half, so kind of like Ursula. And I think Goofy becomes like a sea turtle with his head sticking out of the shell. Like it's
Huh.
it's kind of dumb, but at the same time, like it's pretty cool. You know, you go into the Lion King world, which I think might be in number 2, but you turn into a lion cub. You know, so things like that are really cool. You change with the world that you go into the same way the Heartless do.
Okay, that's interesting, and I guess it makes a certain kind of sense for like multiverse travel or whatever. I guess like it's like the rules are sort of like you have to adapt to the world that you end up in because I guess technically you're entering a different universe? Question mark.
Well, no. That's the other part that's kind of confusing. You actually travel from world to world on what's called a gummy ship, which is like a ship made up of almost like Lego blocks.
Okay, you need to find a way to make that sound less ridiculous.
They don't look like Legos, but you can edit your ships. You can design your ships like in the game to make them have better firepower. You can put the guns where you want them, make them look like how you want or whatever. So you're basically like stacking pieces together as long as you have the base components for a ship to run and you can fit it within like the little box it gives you to edit. Like you can make your ship look like whatever you want. I think you have a certain number of pieces though that you can do, but you can unlock more pieces. And in between worlds that you go to, you're flying this ship and like shooting enemies, kind of like what the fuck's it called? Like not Space Invaders. What's the other one?
Galaga?
Yeah. So it's kind of like that, but it's like, you know, third person over the shoulder, like, and you're shooting like all these enemies that are kind of flying at you and everything, and you're getting through and you travel to the next world. So it's basically you're going through almost like this space between worlds, this like literal space, because they look like planets that are like floating out in space type of deal. But when you get close to them, your appearance changes because you're supposed to pretend that you are part of that world so that way people don't know about other worlds. Because none of these worlds know about each other. So you can't say that you're from another world because that doesn't make sense to them. It's supposed to be a secret.
Okay.
So traveling from one planet to another is, once you get there, you kind of take on aspects of that quote unquote universe slash world or whatever. That movie, I should say. So that way
Okay.
you fit in.
That does explain certain bits that I've seen in the past, or I'm just like, is that like a reskin? Is that like an armor set you pick up in the game or something? But like the character looks different than what they did in a different cutscene with different characters, and so it just made me think that it's being like, oh, the player character enters a new world, got to get that sweet skin loot, or got to
Yeah.
loot a sweet skin for my character so we can look cool in this world.
I will say, as you're playing Worlds, you also unlock different keyblades, and the keyblade is your main weapon, and it looks like a giant key. It has a purpose, but again, don't want to get too much into that. But that's what they're talking about with like the keyblade and everything. Um, you have ones that kind of match worlds as well, and they have different abilities. Like some of them will be better for magic use, some of them are better strength, some of them are better defense. Like, you know, so it's like you're getting your weapons um, with like upgrades, but they also come with like cool skins that match the worlds that you go to. You know, so you can kind of
Okay.
pick and choose. So sometimes you'll see cutscenes where Sora's holding a different keyblade than, you know, watching somebody else's playthrough because maybe they just picked a different key, you know, for whatever missions they were doing. Um, there are times too where people will do nothing but use the beginning keyblade because it's the most like iconic.
Okay.
So yeah, like your weapons and everything kind of follow that theme of they change and you can pick up cool stuff and everything. So there is kind of like a little bit of loot. You can also get like upgrades to your armor and stuff, and Goofy's armor, and different wands and different shields for Goofy and Donald. So there's some like customization like Final Fantasy in there, where you're like, oh, I can pick between these wands for Donald. Like they're all gonna give these effects or whatever, so I'm gonna build my party how I want it.
Okay. So like your standard equipment, cosmetics upgrade system from the early 2000s.
Yeah, yeah, it's
Okay.
very Final Fantasy with that.
Okay.
Um, so I think I'm gonna kind of leave it there with it, and I know that doesn't tell you much. It doesn't tell you what happens with Sora and how he meets up with the iconic duo, Donald and Goofy. You know, it doesn't tell what the whole plot point is. Um, but again, I kind of just wanted to introduce kind of like what Kingdom Hearts is, like how it feels, I guess I should say. So that way
Hmm.
people can get the basic understanding of, do I want to play this? Do I want to experience this universe? You know, does this seem like it would be like at least fun for me to try out? At the very least, you know, watch a little bit of like intro gameplay, or watch just that music video at the very beginning. Like even just that I think would be kick ass if everybody just went and looked that up.
Yeah, no, I'll definitely. I mean, you definitely got me interested in the beginning for it. It sounds like you said, it sounds very anime, and I'm kind of a sucker for a good anime story. I started listening to this, and I was like, oh, Mimir's telling me about his favorite anime now. All right, I thought we were talking about Kingdom Hearts here. Uh, but yeah, no, it definitely sounds interesting, and I gotta admit, I do like the idea of like crossing over to different Disney worlds and like meeting all the different characters and just interacting with them in their settings. Like you're not viewed as an outsider; you're just viewed as another part of their story.
Yeah, and you know, there's a huge overall reason why you're going to each one of these worlds. And again, if you guys want more of me talking about Kingdom Hearts, I could literally sit here and drone on. Like I still have like, I don't know, maybe a few more notes, but again, I don't want to bog it down. I want it to be kind of very open ended so everyone can experience it for themselves. Because when you play that story and when you start feeling the aspects of like the character development and everything, I, at least for me, some of it was like pretty emotional, like growing up, and there is a whole nostalgic feel to it. I will admit, like it might not be the best game out there, and people might look at it and say, "Oh, this game kind of sucks," or "The gameplay's terrible," or the story's crappy. Like, but for me, as somebody who grew up with this and who grew up playing the Kingdom Hearts series, it holds a very special spot in my heart, and I really just want to share that with all of you.
Yeah, there's been enough Kingdom Heart games, and like there's been enough people talking about it, like even now, like years after the fact, that I think that it's one of those games that's just got enough staying power that at some point it's probably worth it to at least give it a good honest try. Like I always figure that it's like, well, I never tried this game when it was at its peak popularity, but it's been years and people are still talking about it, so there's probably something worth exploring with it, even if I missed out on the hype train initially or something. Like I said, a lot of, it exists in pop culture. So, like, what little knowledge I have of Kingdom Hearts does come from that. There was some comedy skit I remember a couple years back where someone was talking about riding the dope ass Disney train, and I was like, "Oh, that sounds interesting." Okay.
I
Uh,
I I will say too, and I just want to throw this out there because I love them so much too. Game Grumps, they have their band Starbomb. They do a song about like uh I think it's like bad video game plots or whatever. They have a couple songs like that. They got like Metal Gear Solid and I think Final Fantasy and everything. But they have a Kingdom Hearts one, and their song is so funny. I also urge people to go look that up because it kind of makes fun of how ridiculous Kingdom Hearts is and how confusing it is. Um, so I urge people like it if maybe you're not gonna check out the game or you're at least a little curious and you don't mind like some spoilers or whatever, like go listen to that music video as well. Like that their band is really good and that song is really good.
I might give that a try, but it's yeah. I'm in the spirit of being good natured. I'm also not going to comment being like it's the plot of Metal Gear Solid is not that ridiculous. Like people just don't know how to follow plot lines.
Yeah, but you should probably look up their song on that one too, because it's pretty funny.
And I'm sure I will offer humble and bland criticism.
But yeah, so again, I left out a lot. There's a lot of secrets, plot points, characters, character development. Um, but let me know if you guys want more. I'm serious. I will go on about it if I need to.
Guys, even if you don't ask, he's gonna probably just tell me about it. So you might as well ask so we can get another recording session out of this.
Probably. That's fair.